not the way I'd have done it.
Oh, really?
No, I'm not saying it's not clever, but...
What?
Bit... disappointed.
Everyone's a critic.
What is up, YouTube? It's your girl Evelyn, and today I'll be deep diving into some of your L Word Gen Q Season 2 opinions. Quick shout out to everyone who answered my dissertation questions over on the community tab. It was super helpful in the making of this video. So without further ado, please sit back, enjoy the video, and as always, there will be spoilers, so proceed with caution. Before we dive in, I want to take a moment of silence to honor all of the storylines we lost in Season 2. These are the plots that were either forgotten or abandoned or just not fully realized. So please join me for the L Word Generation Q 2021 in memoriam. Shane's dog. Anything having to do with poker. Finley's backstory. And last, but certainly not least, the concept of time. It's no secret the L Word Gen Q's second season has been highly criticized by reviewers and fans alike. Much of the criticism is constructive, some of it is nitpicky, but all of it is completely subjective. So whether you loved this season or hated this season, you're absolutely right. And just remember,
it's fiction.
Finley's alcoholism storyline didn't really make sense to me. Finley falling off the wagon makes sense to me. They demonstrated her issues with alcohol last season. However, it would have been nice if we got some backstory on her and found out why and how she became such a mess. There is no logical progression with Finley's alcoholism storyline. It was rushed, poorly done, and anticlimactic. In a surprising, but also unsurprising turn of events, everyone's favorite homewrecker Finley finally realizes she has a drinking problem.
Look, listen, you two. Remember when you said you don't have your shit together? Alright, look at this place. You got everything. I got nothing.
After a DUI followed by a failed intervention, Finley hits rock bottom, and at the end of the season, she's off to rehab, which makes sense. Or at least it should make sense. After all, we watched Finley drink heavily throughout Season 1.
All right, buddy, take it easy.
And she even quit for a while before falling off the wagon in Season 2. In fact, a couple of you who've experienced addiction thought Finley's alcoholism was portrayed realistically. To me, Finley's alcoholism storyline felt uneven and missing much needed context. But I think what damaged it the most was Season 2's weird as pacing. Most of Season 2's storylines suffered from uneven pacing, but it seemed to harm Finley's the most. It's why the progression of her alcoholism just didn't feel fluid, and why her intervention seemed out of place, much like Daenerys torching King's Landing after having 2 bad days in a row. The reason these storylines are so frustrating is because they should have worked. We knew Finley had a drinking problem, just like we knew Daenerys had the potential to burn them all. But when the event finally arrived, most of us were left feeling like we must have missed something. Personally, I love Finley's character, and I liked her Season 2 storyline. In fact, I think it would have been my favorite had they paid it more or better attention. Hopefully in Season 3, if there is a Season 3, the show will figure out its pacing issues, pare down some of those extraneous storylines, and give Finley's addiction a bit more consideration.
Good to see another brother around here.
Yes, of course it is. Something wrong?
How dare you make a fictional show where the Black characters are so disposable, trauma-based, or a tick on your checklist. But this season has raised more criticism, questions, and confusion than perhaps any in the franchise to date. The optics of representation can only do so much when narratives are one-dimensional, fractured, or guided by outdated tropes. It's never been a secret that the L Word is not a world where Black queer folks heavily exist. They quite literally hate and always have.
Oh, Pam, come on. I like your food. No, come on. Stir the pot. Stir the melting pot.
If you were a fan of the original L Word, then you're probably well aware of the show's main criticism, namely that almost all of its characters were white, thin, cis, non-disabled, and feminine. Now, over time, the show did get more diverse, but it never strayed too far from the caucasity of its roots. Enter Marja Lewis Ryan, the showrunner of Generation Q. Marja has been extremely vocal about her mission to right the wrongs of the original show and diversify the cast, and she has. But now the show is being accused of a kind of performative diversity, with certain characters seeming to exist solely to tick a checkbox on the roster of representation.
You tried your best, and you failed miserably. The lesson is, never try.
One thing I try not to do is crucify people for trying. I think it's pointless, and more importantly, it's a terrible way to initiate actual change. But if I notice that you're, I don't know, trying to diversify your television show and going about it in a way that, while admirable, could be more effective, I think constructive critique is not only helpful, it's necessary. And really, the only critique I have for Generation Q is to take their current quantity over quality approach to representation and flip it. Rather than adding 10 new underdeveloped diverse characters every season, why not give the characters you already have more compelling and well-rounded backgrounds and storylines? The thing is, no single show will ever be representative of every type of queer person in existence, and there are queer people that will never see anything close to themselves represented on the L Word, which is exactly why we need more queer screenwriters and filmmakers and showrunners of all types and ethnicities, creating media that represents all of us. Now, that doesn't mean the L Word gets a pass on meaningful representation, and maybe I'm being naive, but I do believe the show is sincerely trying to tell diverse stories. And while there's definitely room for improvement, I, for one, appreciate the effort.
I have never in my life yelled at a girl like this. When my mother yells at this, it's because she loves me. I was rooting for you. We were all rooting for you. How dare you? Learn something from this. When you go to bed at night, you lay there and you take responsibility for yourself, because nobody's going to take responsibility for you.
Least favorite was Sophie's all-around behavior this entire season. Sophie and Finley. Lord, were they intent on making them two unlikable characters? I don't mean flawed, I mean unlikable. Sophie's character, what are they doing with her? The writers are heading for a Jenny 2.0 here. I could be wrong, but I don't think Sophie was supposed to be Season 2's most hated character. But here we are. If you watched my Season 1 recaps, you already know. Your girl was Team Finley from the start, and even back then, I was in the minority. But I didn't care because I liked Sophie. I understood her, and I could relate to her. And yes, she cheated on Danny. But they had terrible chemistry. When Season 2 began, I was all set to root for my favorite flawed character with questionable decision-making skills, but generally good intentions. But it soon became clear that Season 2 Sophie was far less likable than Season 1 Sophie. And it wasn't just her actions that made her unlikable. It was the show's failure to adequately explain those actions.
And anytime I'm near you, I feel something, and it's like, I just... Do you feel it? Do you feel it, or am I f***ing crazy?
Yes, okay, you're not crazy.
Then what the f***, dude?
Sophie spends Season 2 stuck in a toxic cycle of mistreating Finley, then watching Finley drink, then mistreating Finley again, then fucking Finley, then fucking Finley again, then mistreating. You get the point. But I think if the show had given us some insight into Sophie's motivations, I could have at least sympathized with her. I mean, in season 1, Sophie wouldn't shut up about her feelings, but in season 2, she just walks around looking deeply conflicted. And when she finally does voice her feelings, it's so late in the game, we no longer care. Most of you commented that Finley, and more specifically Sophie, was your least favorite thing about the season. Unfortunately, I have to agree. At this point, I don't know what they should do with Sophie, but I really hope they can rehabilitate her character for season 3, if there is a season 3.
So go easy on me.
When I started making this video, I did not plan to go as in-depth as I ended up going on just 3 topics because there were so many other things I wanted to talk about, like the Carrie divide, the problem with Shane, how fan service might be affecting storylines, and why most of us enjoyed season 2 more than the substantially less flawed season 1. But I didn't want to make this video 30 minutes long. As always, thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to let me know what you thought about the show's diversity, along with Finley's alcoholism and Sophie's character assassination, and I'll see you in the next one.